Have you ever wondered which restaurant menus you should avoid because they're shrinking portions, not prices? You sit down, order your old favorite, and suddenly the plate looks more like a snack than a meal you once bragged about. But if some chains are trimming plates this quietly, what else might they be hiding from you? Let's kick things off with a deal that used to feel endless but now leaves you twirling half-empty forks. Olive Garden's never-ending pasta bowl. Picture this. You are sitting in that cozy booth at Olive Garden, the breadsticks arrive, the salad bowl is tossed, and you are bracing yourself for an evening of pasta glory. The never-ending pasta bowl has always been one of those iconic promotions that people looked forward to, a chance to eat like a king for what felt like a small price. Except here is the catch. While the name has not changed, the portions have. Instead of those heaping bowls of fettuccine, penne, or spaghetti you remember, you are now greeted with smaller scoops that feel more like a sampler than a meal. The servers still smile as they offer you a refill, but each new serving seems just a little lighter, a little thinner, and a little less satisfying than the last. Why does this matter? Because the illusion of abundance is what sold the deal in the first place. People did not just want pasta, they wanted the story of being able to eat until they could not take another bite. Now you can polish off 3 bowls and still leave the restaurant wondering if you should grab a slice of pizza on the way home. The price tag, however, has not budged in your favor. It is still pitched as an unbeatable deal, even though the economics do not line up the way they used to. The real frustration comes from the expectation versus reality. When you read never ending, you expect generosity. When you see portion sizes shrink, you feel like the promise has been quietly broken. Olive Garden might argue that you can still keep asking for more, but the truth is the smaller servings add up in a sneaky way. Instead of feeling full after 2 plates, you need 4 or 5. By then, the dining experience has stretched on so long that you are more tired than satisfied. Could you make this deal worth it? Maybe. The hack most seasoned diners know is to load up on toppings and sauces early in the meal. Alfredo, marinara, meat sauce. Pile it high so each bite feels richer than it really is. And yes, do not skip the breadsticks because they are still generous and still free. But when you are relying on bread to make up for pasta, you know something has shifted. It is the kind of menu trick that plays with nostalgia. People remember the Olive Garden of years past when pasta bowls were hearty, service felt endless, and you walked out stuffed for a bargain price. That memory is what keeps customers coming back, even when the reality no longer lives up to the name. So the next time you see that glowing ad for the never-ending pasta bowl, ask yourself this. Are you paying for the pasta, or are you paying for the memory of how it used to be? Do you think the never-ending pasta bowl is still a good deal, or has it lost its charm? Rolling in next is the seafood special that sounds bottomless until the shrimp start arriving in kiddie portions, Red Lobster's Shrimp Fest. Red Lobster built its reputation on the idea of indulgence. When you walked through the door, you expected warm cheddar biscuits, piles of shrimp, and a feast that made you feel like you were on vacation without leaving your town. The Shrimp Fest has always been a crown jewel in that promise. Multiple shrimp dishes, all you can eat, endless refills. It was not just dinner, it was a marathon. But in recent years, that marathon has been cut into short sprints. The first plate still arrives looking strong. Coconut shrimp, scampi, or the classic fried version piled up in golden glory. But after that, the refills start to feel stingier. Instead of generous heaps, you are handed 4 or 5 shrimp at a time. You eat them in under 2 minutes, flag down your server, and wait again. The rhythm of abundance breaks, and what should feel indulgent becomes a waiting game. That is where the disappointment creeps in. The promise of Shrimp Fest was always about the freedom to indulge. When portions shrink, that promise feels hollow. You are still paying the same ticket price, sometimes higher than before, but the shrimp parade is not keeping pace. It is like being invited to a party where the music cuts out every 5 minutes. Price-wise, Shrimp Fest has never been cheap. Depending on where you are, it can run $20 to $30 per person. When the portions were hearty, it felt like a splurge worth bragging about. Now, with smaller plates and slower refills, it feels like you are paying for the memory of what Shrimp Fest once was. The irony is that the cheddar biscuits remain the most consistent part of the meal. Unlimited, fluffy, and warm, they have not shrunk. Diners often joke that the biscuits are the real star of the show, and maybe they are right. When the side bread feels more generous than the headliner shrimp, you know the menu has shifted in strange ways. Can Shrimp Fest still be worth it? Yes, but it takes strategy. The seasoned Shrimp Fest diner knows to order multiple flavors at once, keep requests coming early, and never let the server walk away without queuing up the next plate. But should you have to game the system just to feel like you got your money's worth? That is the bigger question. At its heart, Shrimp Fest is supposed to be about joy, abundance, and indulgence. When the portions shrink, it stops being a feast and starts being a negotiation. That changes the whole vibe. So the next time someone suggests Shrimp Fest, think about what you are really after, the shrimp or the nostalgia. Would you still pay for Shrimp Fest today, or do you think the cheddar biscuits have officially taken the crown? Now, here's a classic date night favorite that somehow slimmed down into snack plates. Applebee's 2 for $20 deal. There was a time when Applebee's 2 for $20 deal was the hero of every broke college kid and budget-conscious couple. 2 entrees and an appetizer for $20? It felt unbeatable. You could take your date out, split some mozzarella sticks, and still leave with your wallet intact. But the deal you remember is not the deal you get today. First, let us talk portion sizes. Those entrees that used to feel like full plates now look suspiciously smaller. The chicken is thinner, the pasta servings lighter, and the fries arrive in little baskets that feel like they belong at a carnival stand. You still get your appetizer, but even those portions have tightened up. It is as if the entire menu went on a diet without telling you. Second, the price has quietly shifted. In many locations, it is no longer even $20. Depending on what you pick, the deal edges higher, closer to $25. At that point, the math stops feeling like a bargain and starts feeling like a trick. What makes this sting is how much nostalgia the deal carries. The 2 for $20 was a cultural moment, especially in the early 2000s. It was the go-to for first dates, casual nights out, and quick celebrations. Everyone has a memory tied to it. Shrinking portions chip away at that memory, leaving you with the shell of the deal but not the substance. Can you still make it work? Sure, but only if you treat it for what it is now. A light meal, not a hearty dinner. Load up on appetizers, maybe split a dessert, and accept that you are paying more for the vibe than the actual food. But if you walk in expecting the generous deal of the past, you will walk out disappointed. Applebee's is not alone here. This is a pattern across casual dining chains. Menus keep their famous names, but behind the scenes, portions and prices do not balance the way they used to. The marketing holds on to nostalgia, while the plates quietly shrink. So the next time someone suggests the 2 for $20, ask yourself, are you there for the food, or for the memory of how good it felt to get a full meal for cheap? Do you think Applebee's should retire the 2 for $20 name? Or is the nostalgia too strong to let go? Sliding onto the list is the tortilla wrap that went from a two-handed monster to a one-handed disappointment. Chipotle burritos. Think back to the first time you had a Chipotle burrito. It was massive. A tortilla stretched to its breaking point, rice spilling out, guacamole oozing from the edges, and you needed both hands plus a stack of napkins just to survive it. That was the appeal. You were not just getting a meal, you were getting a food challenge. But these days, you unwrap your burrito, and instead of that heavy, football-shaped package, you are staring at something slimmer, lighter, and suspiciously less stuffed. The shrinking burrito has become one of the biggest gripes among Chipotle fans. Social media is full of people holding up burritos from the past next to burritos today, and the difference is hard to ignore. What used to feel like a guarantee, a burrito so big you could split it into 2 meals, now often leaves you still hungry. The fillings are lighter, the scoops of rice and beans smaller, and the proteins, whether it is chicken, steak, or carnitas, seem to be measured out with a stingier spoon. The price, of course, has not gone down. In fact, burrito prices have crept up year after year. Depending on where you live, you could be paying $11 to $15 for something that barely feels like a full meal anymore. And that is the heart of the frustration. Customers are paying more and getting less. It is not just about food, it is about value. Part of Chipotle's branding has always been freshness and customization. The idea that you are in control of your meal, watching it built in front of you. That is still true, but even with customization, it is hard to fight smaller base portions. You can ask for extra rice or double beans, but protein always seems limited unless you pay extra. Suddenly, that affordable, hearty meal you relied on has turned into an expensive lunch that may not even fill you up. The real sting comes from nostalgia. People remember the Chipotle burritos of the early 2000s, the ones that became the stuff of legend on college campuses and in offices. Back then, one burrito could feed you all day. Today, it feels like you are buying into the memory more than the actual product. Can you still hack the system? Some say yes. Asking for extra on every ingredient, ordering bowls instead of burritos for larger portions, or even splitting one bowl into 2 tortillas at home has become the new strategy. But should you really need to strategize just to get your money's worth at a fast casual chain? That is the question. At the end of the day, Chipotle burritos are still tasty. The flavors, the toppings, the sauces, they all work. But the experience has changed. It no longer feels like an indulgent giant meal. It feels like a slimmer version of itself wearing the same name. So here's the real question for you. Do you think Chipotle burritos are still worth the price, or have they officially lost their legendary status? Coming up, we've got a menu star that looks oversized until you notice more garnish than meal. Cheesecake Factory lunch specials. The Cheesecake Factory is famous for overwhelming choice. Their menu is a literal book, pages upon pages of options, and when you order, the plates arrive looking huge. The lunch specials were supposed to be the perfect middle ground. All the flavor and variety of the dinner menu at a slightly smaller portion and a friendlier price. But lately, those smaller portions have crossed into tiny territory. Here's what happens. You order a pasta, chicken, or sandwich lunch special. The plate arrives, wide and gleaming, garnished to perfection. At first glance, it looks like a feast, but when you cut into it, you realize most of that space is covered in greens, sauces, and decorative extras. The main portion, the protein or pasta, is noticeably lighter than you expected. It is a trick of plating that leaves you fooled for about 2 seconds, until you dig in and realize the meal is not nearly as filling as the presentation suggests. This hits harder because the Cheesecake Factory has always built its reputation on excess. Giant plates, overflowing portions, leftovers guaranteed. That was part of the charm. Lunch specials were supposed to be scaled down just enough, not reduced to the point where you leave still hungry. Today, you pay $13 to $15 for what feels like a sampler when you were expecting a meal. It is not just about portion size either. The quality of ingredients is still good, the sauces are flavorful, and the bread basket remains generous. But bread cannot carry the weight of a main course that feels like it has been trimmed too far back. The entire value proposition of the lunch menu has shifted. Instead of feeling like a smart choice, it feels like a compromise. Can you still make it work? Sure, if you treat lunch specials as an appetizer before sharing a slice of cheesecake, that strategy makes sense because the desserts are still indulgent and filling, and they have not shrunk the way the entrees have. But that does not excuse the way the specials themselves feel stripped down. The truth is, people do not go to Cheesecake Factory for moderation. They go for abundance. When abundance disappears, the experience loses part of its magic. So the next time you are tempted by a lunch special, ask yourself, are you really saving money, or are you just paying for the illusion of a full plate? Would you still order a lunch special at Cheesecake Factory, or do you think it is better to skip straight to dessert? Next up is a fan-favorite wing basket where the numbers do not always add up. Buffalo Wild Wings wing counts. Few things feel more American than a big basket of wings, a round of drinks, and a game on television. Buffalo Wild Wings built its entire empire on this formula. The sauce variety, the heat scale, the casual sports bar vibe, it was irresistible. But the wings themselves? They are not what they used to be. Here is the problem. When you order wings at Buffalo Wild Wings today, the portions are noticeably smaller. Not just in count, but in size. The wings themselves seem skinnier, the meat less generous. And when you look down at your plate, you cannot help but notice the gaps between them. Ordering a dozen wings used to mean a hearty meal. Now it feels like a snack with a side of sauce. This shift is especially painful because wings are meant to be indulgent. You want to dig in, get messy, and feel like you are having a feast. Instead, diners often feel shortchanged, staring at a basket that looks half empty before they even start. And with prices creeping higher and sometimes $15 to $18 for a dozen, the value just is not there anymore. The sauces remain solid. From mild to blazing, they still deliver that range of flavors that made Buffalo Wild Wings famous. But sauce alone cannot cover for wings that feel undersized. You cannot dip generosity out of a cup. Some regulars have started noticing tricks with portion names too. Snack size, small, medium. The definitions seem to change over time, with fewer wings fitting into the same categories. It leaves you wondering if the goal is to confuse you while quietly reducing what you get. Can you still enjoy it? Of course, if you are there for the vibe, the sports, and the drinks, the wings still make sense as part of the package, but if you came for the feast, you are likely walking away disappointed. It is another example of how restaurants keep the same names and same promises, but deliver less behind the curtain. Nostalgia keeps people coming back, but the math does not. So here is something to chew on. Do you think Buffalo Wild Wings has lost its crown? Or are the sauces strong enough to keep you loyal? Drifting into breakfast territory, here's a stack that shrank while the whipped cream grew. IHOP pancake stacks. If there was ever a place that sold the dream of breakfast indulgence, it was IHOP. You walked in expecting tall stacks of fluffy pancakes, dripping with syrup, maybe topped with fruit, nuts, or a swirl of whipped cream. It was a celebration of excess, the kind of meal you ordered on a Sunday morning when calories did not matter and joy came in layers. But lately, the stacks themselves have been shrinking. What used to be 5 tall pancakes now often shows up as 3. The pancakes are thinner, the plate feels emptier, and the stack no longer looks like the tower you remembered. The toppings, however, have grown. Mountains of whipped cream, sprinkles of sugar, and decorative fruit slices create the illusion of abundance. But the heart of the meal, those warm, fluffy pancakes, has quietly slimmed down. The price has crept up too. What was once a cheap indulgence is now $10 to $12 in many locations. For that price, you want to feel full, but the smaller stacks leave you finishing your plate too quickly and still scanning the menu for something extra. IHOP has always leaned into fun and whimsy. Pancakes shaped like faces for kids, colorful syrups, seasonal specials. That part is still there. But shrinking stacks change the math. When the base meal is thinner, the toppings start doing all the heavy lifting. It is like ordering a sundae and realizing the ice cream scoop is half the size, but the cherry got bigger. Can you still enjoy them? Of course, if you treat it as dessert for breakfast, the toppings are fun and the pancakes are still tasty. But if you came for nostalgia, the endless, towering stack, you might feel shorted. So the next time you sit down at IHOP, think about this. Do you still crave the pancake stacks for their flavor? Or are you really chasing the memory of what they used to be? Following close behind is the sandwich that claims a full foot, but delivers a skinny middle. Subway footlong subs. The Subway footlong has always been marketed as the ultimate value meal. A whole foot of bread stuffed with meats, veggies, and sauces. A customizable sandwich that could fill you up for less. For years, the deal was unbeatable, and Subway leaned heavily into that identity. But lately, the footlong has been shrinking where it matters most, inside the bread. Yes, the sandwich still measures 12 inches. That part is not in dispute. But look closely at the fillings, and you will notice the difference. The scoops of tuna or chicken are smaller, the slices of turkey or ham seem thinner, and the veggies are sprinkled more sparingly than before. What once felt like a stuffed sub now often looks like a hollow loaf with a line of fillings running down the middle. It is not just perception either. Longtime customers swear that meats and cheeses are portioned more carefully now, almost as if every slice is rationed. You can always double meat, but that costs extra, turning your affordable footlong into a pricier meal that no longer feels like a bargain. The rise in prices makes this sting more. In many places, a footlong now runs $9 to $12 depending on the fillings. That is hardly cheap lunch territory anymore, especially when you need to pay extra for chips and a drink. Subway still banks on nostalgia. The idea that you can grab a sandwich quickly, customize it endlessly, and leave satisfied. That branding has not changed, but the portions have. So while the bread still measures up, the fillings no longer do. Which leaves us with this. Do you think the Subway footlong still deserves its name, or is it time to call it the Subway half-filled? And finally, we land on the Golden Arches bargain bin that's shrunk so much it could pass for sliders, McDonald's value menu. There was a time when the McDonald's value menu was legendary. You could walk in with $5 and leave with a burger, fries, and a drink, maybe even dessert. It was the ultimate cheap eat, consistent, filling, and reliable. But today, the value menu feels like a shadow of what it once was. The burgers themselves have shrunk in size, the patties thinner, the buns smaller. Fries that once overflowed the carton now barely reach the top. Even the drinks, once famously oversized, have been scaled back in many locations. The value has quietly drained out of the value menu, leaving behind smaller portions at prices that keep climbing. For many people, the change is most noticeable in the burger. What was once a satisfying quick meal is now closer to a snack. One cheeseburger will not fill you anymore, meaning you often need to order two, which defeats the idea of a budget-friendly menu. And with prices creeping upward, you are not just ordering more food, you are spending more money. Of course, McDonald's is still convenient, still fast, and still comforting in its own way. The nostalgia of Happy Meals, the fries with their signature flavor, the Big Mac jingle, all of it still holds cultural weight. But the value menu itself no longer feels like a safe bet for filling up on a budget. Can it still work? Sure, if you are after a quick bite and a taste of childhood nostalgia. But if you are counting on it as a meal, you might walk away disappointed. So here's the final thought. Do you still see the McDonald's value menu as a deal? Or is it just a name that reminds you of better days? And there you have it. If you have ever unwrapped a meal that looked smaller than your memory, drop your own portion shrink story in the comments. Hit like if you have felt that same frustration, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never eat alone in the dark again.
And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.